Back once again with Taylor from the Gloucester Daily Times to get caught up on all the things that are going on. And as usual, Taylor, another crazy week in and around the city.
Yeah, another crazy week as we enter in a crazy summer. I know that we've all been hearing about Governor Baker's new announcements about the lifting of mask mandates, the eventual lifting of the state of emergency here in Massachusetts. There's been all this excitement about the could be's, would be's, and might have beens. And I have sadly to inform the community that St. Peter's Fiesta is still not happening. I spoke with the committee leader the other day, and we were chatting just about kind of what it would look like for something to happen. And Joe Novello had mentioned that it's not going to happen this year. They are going to do a virtual novena as they had done last year, but it's not going to be in person, and there's no chance of doing a St. Peter's Fiesta this upcoming summer, just because they would have to redo all the permitting process. They had put that on hold once they had made the decision in April to cancel. And then also financially, they get a lot of their funding from local businesses that are hurting already from the pandemic. And so he had mentioned that that would just not be fair to them to put that pressure on the community. And so he said that they're going to kind of pivot and look at, again, the next year and kind of focus on how to make that one big and great. But for this year, St. Peter's Fiesta is not happening. So unfortunately, that is one event that's going to be not occurring this year, but that doesn't mean that the city isn't abounding in activities this summer. I know personally for myself, I just say go find a trail, go to State Fort Park, enjoy the ocean out there, do you have a sailboat, go enjoy the ocean. But there are also a lot of other things happening in the city that is quite exciting, especially around July 4th. So the annual July 3rd fireworks display and a concert that is usually hosted by Ringo Starr is going to be set to go off with a bang that weekend. It's going to be quite exciting, and they're going to have a tribute to those who have been affected or lost loved ones to COVID-19. So stay tuned for more information about that as that comes forward. The details of the Fishtown Horribles Parade that is an annual event here in the city. That information of whether that might happen or not is still to be determined. We're still waiting to hear announcement that it's scheduled to be told to the public next week. So we're waiting to hear on that. And then also one other event that you guys should know that is happening is the Gloucester Schooner Festival is happening this year. It's going to be its 37th year. And they're more than excited to be back in the community and to kind of have those schooners go as fast as they can and just enjoy the open ocean, open air. So some things to look forward to for this summer and some things to look forward to in the foreseeable future come 2022.
Very cool. And we understand also that the block parties are on this year too, and the Waterfront Festival should also be on. So yeah, things are happening again. And of course, other communities nearby are trying to sort through what they can and can't do late this spring and for summer now with the latest announcement. All right, Taylor, let's talk about, it is election season, and we have 3 familiar names who are not running for re-election this year.
Yeah, so there are 3 longtime city officials who are choosing not to run for re-election this year, and those include Ward 3 Councilor and City Council President Steve LeBlanc, Jonathan Pope, who's the chairperson for the school committee, and Joel Favaza, who is not going to be seeking a 4th term on the school committee as a member. And so these 3 have been key players throughout this community in the city as they've had to navigate, a normal year's chaos, including a pandemic's year chaos within their respective roles. And so they each have their different reasons for leaving, but I more in depth got to speak with LeBlanc and talk to Steve a little bit more about kind of why he is not running. And he said he might run again in the future, but after 10 years in local politics, it's a long time to be kind of focused on that part of the community. And he's about to have a grandchild and is excited to be able to spend that time with his family. He said that he might join some boards and commissions as he has a lot of knowledge, a lot of information, and a lot of experience within city politics. And he wants to kind of help the next group of people sail forward into some really calm waters. So those 3 will not be running. We do have some updates about those who will be seeking election or re-election. And for city councilor to take the place of Steve on Ward 3 is Carlton McKay Jr. and Adam Orlando. And so those things are to know. And then for the school committee, we have 2 open seats on the school committee because Pope and Favazza are not running. So the four people who are running, who are new to the race, are Keith Minio, William Melvin, Richard Roberts, and Thomas Stein. All the rest are seeking re-election. That includes Kathleen Clancy, Melissa Joy Texier Prince, Samantha Watson, and Laura Weeson. And so it seems like there's quite a big race. City Council, there's still a few people that we're waiting to hear if they're going to be pulling papers for re-election, but as of right now, Ward 1 Scott Memhard, Ward 2's Barry Pett, and Ward 5 Sean Nolan are all seeking re-election. Also, Valerie Gilman, Ward 4, is also seeking re-election in this year. We're still waiting to hear from other ones. But some other people who are running are Gregory Verga, seeking an at-large council position. Robin Hubbard is also seeking it. And then we're looking at the mayor's situation, looking at, how many people are running for mayor this year. And as I've said in other videos, Safathia Romeo Taken is running for re-election, including the newly person to have pulled papers, John Harvey, Francisco Scalafani, Joseph Polizia, and Brian Pollard. So there's a lot of people here in the community running, and I realize that's a mouthful of information about election season, but I promise you there's going to be a lot more coming this year.
It is going to be a crazy summer and fall around here.
Fall is going to be nuts with these elections. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Taylor, Gloucester has another CAO?
Has another CAO, you were correct, Corey. So I feel like we probably had this conversation a fair share number of times in the past couple of months, but the city does have a new CAO. So the former Essex County Sheriff Frank G. Cousins Jr. Has been announced as the temporary CAO here within the city of Gloucester. So he comes after 2 interims. We saw Vanessa Krosick had been the interim after Jim Destino left his position as the acting CAO in early 2020. And then after Vanessa resigned, for reasons we still don't understand or have been privy to, Nicole Keyser came on board as the temporary CAO as well. And from what my understanding is she was seeking to be, to get appointed by and get voted on by the city council as acting CAO. However, she too resigned from her position after a few months. So there had been, we're in the thick of budget season, and there's a lot to go on in this in the community. And so Frank Cousins is now coming on board, and I had a chance to speak with him right before he went down to Gloucester to, sign papers and make it official. And he had mentioned that he's going down to, help the mayor with the budget and anything else that she might need help with. And so we'll see as continues to see if this is, again, just a temporary position or if this is something that he might take on and seek, a vote from the council to become the full chief administrative officer. But as of right now, from what I understand in my reporting and speaking to Frank and other people, right now it is just a temporary position.
So Taylor, what would the timing be for that? I mean, is he allowed to go on as the temporary CFO for, for 4 months, 6 months, a year? When does he need to make a decision, and when does the city council make a decision?
That's a great question. And it's CAO, Chief Administrative Officer. CFO is John Dunn, Chief Financial Officer. Lots of different names and acronyms here in the city. But for CAO, for Frank Cousins, it's a 90-day appointment. And so he'll have 90-day appointment. And then if he is seeking to be in it long term, then he'll be sworn in at the city clerk's office in short, or he will be signed in the city's clerk's short order. And then if he's seeking to be on it long term, then he'll be voted on by the city council as the acting CAO. But again, we thought that of Nicole Keyser and that never followed through. So we'll see what happens. And but as of right now, we just know that he'll be helping the mayor as they have a very busy budget season.
I have one more question. Does he have experience with the city of Gloucester? I mean, how does somebody walk in the middle of budget season and help out?
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm not quite sure. I know that not quite sure about his relationship to the city of Gloucester, but I know that he does have quite the experience within politics. So again, as I said earlier, he had been the former Essex County Sheriff, but other than that, he's also no stranger as he's done 20 years in that role, and he was the first African American to serve as sheriff in Massachusetts. And then he also would go on to be the Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce as well. Or not Cape Ann Chamber,
Newbury.
correction there, the Newbury Chamber of Commerce, and what that looks like. And so he's been really, in the depth of politics in communities. He's worked on city councils, and so has that experience from other places. But again, to this place in Gloucester, he had a connection with the mayor for certain. They probably made a connection there, and he's met and talked with her in the past, I am sure. But I guess that's the exciting thing of a new person, is talking with them and getting to know them, as we'll hear a little bit more about his background as we dive into these future months and weeks to kind of see what his connection has been and what his connection will be.
Great, thank you.
All right, school is still in session and summer program starts soon. Let's talk about the mask mandate.
Yes. So again, another conversation about governor's orders and how he had mentioned that, schools are no longer requiring their students to wear masks outside, even if they are not 6 feet of social distance apart. And so as he made that announcement earlier this week, municipalities had the opportunity to decide for themselves, do we want to keep the stricter kind of regulations, or do we want to follow the governor's orders and, start to ease back into some sense of normalcy. So the Gloucester School Committee had an emergency meeting earlier this week to discuss just that and to think about how would this impact their community, how would this impact their teachers, and what does it look like going forward. And they decided that they wanted to vote to accept what the governor has to say and say, whatever he decides, we want to follow that. But then the superintendent does have, the ability to adjust and change as maybe for their very specific community, things might ebb and flow differently than other communities. And so with that being said, they had decided Tuesday night to ease that mask mandate for students outside, which means that if they're outside, they don't have to wear a mask, whether that's for sporting events related to the school, whether that's, having class outside. Teachers are still required, and adults in general are still required to wear masks if they cannot keep that distance, that 6 feet distance. And also that mask mandate still does apply within the school building. So it's really that idea of having open space and being able to breathe fresh air. So that's a big announcement. I know a lot of people have been itching to see people's smiling faces. And we'll see where this goes, as we know that, the mask mandate, in general, indoors and outdoors, is about to lift here in the state. And then we're out of the state of emergency in June. So it seems like things are happening rapidly, maybe even faster than they were in the beginning of the pandemic when we were putting on these regulations. It seems like we're all rushing to figure out what the best decisions are now that we've all, started to follow and take these values of wearing masks as just a form of decency and practice. And so what does that look like when we're now told that we can take them off, and how does that, affect our social and emotional experiences with each other, and also just in general our interactions with each other. So it's going to be interesting to see how that affects the students and also the teachers, who have to kind of figure out how do they keep track of masks, do they have extra masks, because they already have to juggle so much this year. So there's a lot there, and I'm sure there's a lot more to come, and that story is continuing to develop, so I'm sure we'll have more to discuss next week as well.
Great.
And lastly, Taylor, you are out and about on the trails all the time, walking, running, climbing. The ticks are here.
Oh boy, the ticks are here, and I forgot about them. I forgot that ticks were a thing, and unfortunately, I was reminded the other day that they are definitely not.
I remember we had this conversation last year, this time about the ticks, yeah.
I do remember that too, and I remember talking to David Calvo, and I had become a member of the Ticks of Cape Ann Facebook page, and I think it's awesome.
That's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
David Calvo, he runs it. Thank you, David, for running that Ticks of Cape Ann.
It is, and I've been going on it daily to kind of get, hear updates and hear what it's been like, because again, I live and work in a lot of different communities, and so I'm always curious to know if the same thing that's happening in Gloucester is also happening in Salem or Beverly or Peabody. And it seems like, especially with so much rich woodland areas. Ticks just love that wooded, shady areas that Gloucester and Cape May provide, and grasses. And so my column this week will be discussing, the annual voyage of the tick and what can you do to avoid them. But if you unfortunately cannot avoid them, what can you do to safely remove them, as we try to avoid Lyme disease and all those scary diseases that those bugs bring to our communities. So stay tuned for that. And also, I just want to say, also, don't forget about cicadas. Those are also coming.
Yes, right. 17 years, right?
Yeah, after 17 years, they are coming our way. So, and as we talk about ticks, also just don't forget about the other things as well, such as cicadas and poison ivy. So the outdoors is a great place. Go travel it, enjoy it, but also be prepared. That's a big thing. As I talk about that a lot in LNT practices. Be prepared for all different types of weather and creation. So, all right, guys, I'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you, Taylor.